my first novel took place in Hollywood, and so I had to spend some time there, sitting by a pool, eating a lot of avocados. And this book took place in Mallorca, so I had to go spend some time there. The only problem is that I went in the off-season, so I was sitting next to a pool, only it was empty. But, yeah, I went just for a couple of weeks, which was so beautiful. I went at the end of January, and I was pregnant, so I couldn't drink the wine or eat all the beautiful unpasteurized cheeses. But it did mean that like the beaches were gorgeous and empty, and the museums were pretty empty, and I could just sort of wander around. It's sort of like this weather in January in Mallorca. It's like you need a sweater, but that's it, and you just walk around like the Spaniards do. Yeah.
You were introduced as your writing is partially fiction and partially autobiographical. So what part of this book is autobiographical?
Well, I think what Whitney was saying was that I write both fiction and nonfiction. This is completely fiction.
Okay,
this is
so
all
none
fiction.
of your secrets are coming out.
No, none of my. Well,
I
mean, maybe you know what? Maybe that's not entirely true. The Post family, our parents and a daughter and a son who live in a brownstone on 75th Street in Manhattan. My elementary school teachers who are sitting in the front row are laughing because they know what's coming next. I grew up with parents and my older brother in a brownstone on 85th Street, so it's totally different than 75th Street. 10 whole blocks. In some way, there are. I would say that this world is true to me if the particular facts are not. I certainly feel like I know these people very well, and they have some things in common with my family, but in particular the parents are absolutely not anything like my parents, which I feel good about, because I put them through some stuff here, and I wouldn't want to air my family's own dirty laundry in that way. Although I will say, and why not? I admit this to you guys because I already talked to a whole room full of ladies about this over lunch in Pleasanton. But there is a scene in this book where the 18-year-old Sylvia, spoiler alert, loses her virginity, and that I really was like. It's not at all my experience, but I was like trying to give her like the experience that like I really would have wanted as an 18-year-old. So if you read that, just imagine that like that's what happened to me too. It's not, but let's just go with that.
So do you prefer writing fiction or nonfiction?
I do, yeah. I prefer writing fiction. It's fun to make things up. If you have to tell the truth, then you have to make sure that you get things right. Ugh, what a pain. It's better to just. Yeah, I like doing both, but writing fiction is more fun.
Yeah, I think Charles and Miles are two man couples.
Yeah.
So what was your research like, and what do two man couples say to you? Like, do they tell you got it right, or?
Well, the book's only been out for
A day.
it's like a week and a half, so not that many. I haven't heard.
So what type of research did you do?
Specifically for those characters?
Yeah.
Well, I did talk to a few friends of mine who had recently adopted children, because that's what they're sort of working through during the book. So I did, that's the only research I did for them, is that I wanted to know what it was like to try to adopt a baby. And I learned all sorts of things that I stuck right in there. So I would hope that I got that right, because I had spoken to enough people who had actually done it. Yeah. One thing that surprised me that is in the book that is true, I don't know if any of you have adopted children and have not had this experience, then please tell me. But one thing that one friend of mine told me was that when an agency calls you to tell you that you've been selected, that they tell you the name of the baby. that they say, you know, Emma is 8 pounds, 9 ounces, and she's born, you know, which is, I don't know, which I'd never sort of thought about, that the baby would already have a name, but it's neither here nor there. Yes.
You're teaching that?
I'm not teaching at the moment. I was teaching this last semester at Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee,
Yeah.
which was really fun.
Cool.
The students were very, very smart and very obedient. They did anything I asked them to, which is an experience I had not had before. And it's in the South, you know.
Yeah.
So they were also much more conservative than I was used to. So I think we shocked each other over the course of the semester. Like one of my best students, this really adorable boy, said to me, "Oh, you know, I have to miss class next week, or whatever," and that's fine. And the following week, I said, "Oh, you know, how was your trip?" He said, "Oh, it's good. I went to Washington, D.C. and performed an act of civil disobedience." And I was like, "Yeah, that's awesome." And then it turned out it was a right to life rally. And I was like, "Oh God!"
And then you marked him down for his action.
You know, I was like, yeah.
What is it about sending your characters on vacation?
I know. This is a bad habit I have. I really like to do it. I really like to do it. Elisha is like an Emma Straub completist, I think, and has noticed that I like to send my characters on vacation. In my short story collection, I think I do it like 6 times out of 12. I'm like, go elsewhere. I don't know. I guess I really like to travel, and I find that I notice things more precisely when I'm not at home. Because at home you're just sort of in your normal routine, and you don't sort of see things as much, or that's true for me at least. Yeah, I know. It's a habit that, especially after writing a book called The Vacationers, I should probably stop doing it for a while.
But I think you let your guard down when you're on vacation.
Yeah.
And as a fiction writer, it would allow you a great venue to, because it sounds like your book is full of secrets.
It is.
So it gives an opportunity to expose those secrets in an
It
environment
works
that
so well.
wouldn't
It
have-
works so
would
well.
not
That's the
at
problem.
home.
It works
Yeah.
so well all the time.
Yeah.
I have to stop doing it. I have to figure out a new trick.
The covers are beautiful and I did a vacation in the setting, but how do you feel about your book being called a beach read? I've seen it kind of flashing around.
I
everywhere.
think it's
Yeah.
I think it's great. I don't know, there was this whole kerfuffle recently about YA books. Did you read this? It was on like Salon or something, where someone wrote a piece that, like, you know, adults shouldn't read YA. I don't know, it's just like, I feel like if adults want to read YA, they should read YA. And if anyone wants to read something called a beach read a beach read. What do I care? I just want people to read the book, you know? And the fact that it has such an alluring cover, I think can only work in its favor. I think it's so beautiful. I'm like obsessed with it. And what you can't see on the poster is that they added more people on the back and on the, what do you call it, flaps too. I just want to eat it up, and I think that if people want to bring it with them on vacation, it's great. I mean, I now have a 9.5-month-old baby, so I don't know when I get to like have a vacation like I used to, where I could just like read like 6 books in like 3 days and do nothing. But that has always been one of my like greatest pleasures. So if people have my book in that stack, then great. Yes, David again.
How has being a mom changed your work or the work that you want to create?
I'm glad you said the work that I want to create,
Right.
not the work that I have created, because I haven't. Yeah, I mean, after I had the baby, my dad, who's also a writer, said something like, "Oh, this is going to be in all your books now, isn't it?" Like, just, I don't know, pregnancy, childbirth. And I was like, yeah, it is. And I was already sort of imagining, like, the pregnant character in my next book who was, like, going to have some very dramatic birth scene, you know? So I think that
Yeah.
it's changed it in that way, that there are just, you know, experiences that I've had now that I can put into fiction. I'm looking forward to doing that. I was definitely thinking about being a parent, becoming a parent a lot as I was writing this, because I was pregnant the whole time. And so there's definitely more about what it feels to be a mother, what it feels to be a child, what it, you know, how it feels to want a child, that sort of stuff. There's a lot of that in here. And now, I mean, now that I've had a baby, I feel like I wish I could go back and like put in even more. But I think that that's how it goes, where
Sure.
like that'll go into the next one, and
Sure.
by that point there will be something else I've learned that'll have to go in the one.
Yeah.
That's why one has to write lots of books,
Right.
for all the things you learn. Maybe that's
Uh,
yeah. Hi.
I have a bunch of questions. Would you
Oh.
like them all at once? Or
Yes,
one by one?
yeah, hit me.
Okay, so you weren't in this area to promote Laura Lamont. So
No.
how was that tour, and was it fantastic or scary or what? Okay, my next question. My next question is, I heard a podcast that revealed, and maybe you had mentioned it before, but I didn't know you had written a fantasy novel, an English fantasy novel.
Oh, God.
So I'd like to know more about that. My next question is, have you written many things with your father, the famous Peter Straub, and if that one that actually was published was the first one, what was that experience like?
Okay. Question number one. Laura Lamont was great. It was really fun. I bought myself a lot of party dresses and just had so much fun. You know, what I've learned about publishing, not so much writing books, but publishing them and then promoting them, is that you're asked to do all these things that connect somehow to the book. So when Laura Lamont came out, everybody wanted to talk to me about who my favorite movie stars were and my favorite movies of all time and things like that, which was fun. Because I, you know, got to sort of just keep watching old movies and rattle off factoids about them. The second question was, my fantasy novel. Nobody ever needs to know about my fantasy novel. It's the fantasy novel that Joey's talking about is one of 3 books that I wrote in my very early 20s when I was like, I'm a novelist, starting right now. Only I wasn't really. I mean, I wrote novels, so I guess I was a novelist, but they were very, very, very bad, especially the fantasy novel. For example, this is how bad the fantasy novel was. The 2 main characters were both named Tom. It was so confusing. It was like a fantasy of mine that anyone would read it and know who was talking ever. So that's the fantasy novel question. The third question is writing things with my dad. So my father and I have only ever written one thing together, which is this short story called Lost Lake that is in an anthology that's probably in this bookstore called Exo Orpheus, which was edited by this super cool woman named Kate Bernheimer, who also edited this anthology called My Mother She Killed Me, My Father He Ate Me. That book is sort of modern retellings of fairy tales, and Exo Orpheus is retellings of myths. And so my father and I wrote this short story together, only, and this was something that I didn't think about beforehand when we said yes, but my father writes very, very long books and doesn't write short stories, ever. And so I was like, you know, meanwhile I went to an MFA, I can write a short story. It's one of the tools that I have in my toolbox, whatever. And so I was like, okay, Dad. So the whole thing, we put it off to the last minute. So we had 1 week. And I was like, okay, Dad. Let's say we want this to be 20 pages, right? We have a week. Let's say it's 20 pages. I'll write 3 pages, you write 3 pages. I'll write 3 pages, you write 3 pages. It'll be done, it'll be great. Bing, bang, boom. We knew what we wanted it to be. I write 3 pages. I send it to him. He sends me back 25 pages. Okay, this is already too long. And we haven't even gotten to the story yet. So I spent a lot of time editing down what my father had written, which was good because like it gave me a sense of agency that I wasn't sure I was going to have working on something with my dad. But as soon as he sent me those 25 pages, I was like, no. So it wasn't the easiest experience, but it was really fun to get to do it with him. And I think that he and I should turn it into a whole YA novel. But we'll see. I don't know. He's in the middle of writing another book, so he's got some other things cooking at the moment. But it was really fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did I get them all? Okay.
Except I really want to know more about the fantasy novel.
I promise you, Tom and Tom. The Ballad of Tom and Tom. It's not what it's called, but it could have been. Hi, yeah.
I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit about your process for a short story versus a novel?
Yeah, so now that I've just told you that I know how to write a short story, I, of course, have to admit that I don't really know how to do either thing. I mean, my process is, I think, basically the same in that, like, I like to have a sense of what I'm going to write first before I plow ahead. And in the case of a novel, I like to outline, even if that outline changes, which it always does. I like to at least pretend to myself that I know exactly what's going to happen. And the same is sort of true when I write a short story, is that I like to have sort of little, like, paragraph up top on the first page of what I think the story's about before I go forth and do it. I think the difference for me, I mean, there are a lot of differences, obviously, but the main difference in terms of how I approach it is that for a novel, I like to sort of have things feel like I've covered everything, whereas with a short story, it's sort of more fun to leave it more open-ended. I'm trying to work on a short story right now, actually, and I'm finding it really challenging, so we'll see. I should take my own advice and feel like I don't have to wrap it all up so neat. Yeah.
As I read the novel, I kept underlining things that Franny said because she was hysterical.
Oh, good.
And she would make these pronouncements. And I'm just wondering, where did her voice come from?
I love Franny. I'm glad.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm glad. You know, one of even though I truly am not wounded in any way by anyone who criticizes this book, I do find it sort of surprising that some people have said that they don't like her, because I think she's amazing. I think she's funny, and she's a good cook, and she's sexy. Like, I love Franny. Where did her voice come from? I don't know. I've been writing about her for a long time. Since about 2005, I started working on a novel that eventually, through very circuitous means, turned into this novel. So I don't know. I've been living with her for a long time, and the first sort of draft of a novel that I wrote about this family was a big mess. But I pulled some pieces out of that became short stories, and there's one story in my short story collection that's Franny as a 16-year-old girl. So I mean, it's kind of weird, I think, how much I know about her and about this family. Like, I really have, like, their entire backstories.
Will you be revisiting the Post family?
I think so. Probably not immediately. You know, I have to give them a little time to. Yeah, and to, you know, get back from vacation, settle back in, etc. But yeah, I think so. Especially Sylvia. I love Sylvia. down the road, I think I'll see where they are. I'm curious. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your MFA experience and maybe any advice or key takeaways or things that you wish you'd known going in that you would say to somebody who's interested in pursuing that?
Yeah. Sorry, I have to take my clothes off to answer that question. I loved my MFA experience enormously. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I got to study with Lori Moore, which was a dreamy, dreamy dream for me. I think MFAs are great if you don't have to pay for them. You know, Columbia is a great school with great professors and cool writers, and they will introduce you to agents and stuff like that, but you might have to pay $100,000 to do it. You know, Columbia is one of those programs where they offer different financial aid packets. So some people get to go basically for free, and some people pay $100,000 for a 2-year degree. And that is crazy, I think. Especially if you really just want to be a writer. I mean, that, like, who's gonna make that money? Like, that just seems bonkers. Especially bonkers for poets, actually. Yeah, so my advice would be to find a program that is free. There are lots of them, lots of really good ones. And when I say free, I mean mostly that they give you like a TA-ship and then a tuition remission. That's, I think, the best thing. And not to, even though I went and studied with someone who I had previously been obsessed with, I would say it actually doesn't really matter who you go to study with, because the point is that you go and spend this concentrated time on your own writing, and you will be surrounded by people who are smart and people who know more than you do about the structure of short story. You know, like you will learn from the people who you're around, whether they're famous or not. So yeah, and you know, it's hard to get. I applied to 4 schools and I got into 1, so I went. But I've been teaching some classes for adults in New York, and a lot of my students then go on to MFA programs, and they sometimes apply to 20 of them, just because it's gotten so competitive. So I would say, if you really, really, really know that you want to do it, apply to lots and lots of programs, see what shakes out, and see who gives you the most money, and then go there. Even better if it's somewhere weird, where you don't have a lot of friends, because then you'll really, right. Is that good advice?
One more question. One more burning question.
One more burning question? Clearly I will answer anything.
Yeah, I was just wondering about, you love the character, you know the family, you know the back history. I'm just thinking as a reader how I reflect on these characters that someone else invented. And they get kind of meshed in with real people I know, and I might compare the fake character with a real friend of mine, or think what they have in common, and I just wonder, oh, this person is fake, but you're the one, you invented them, so I just wonder how they work in your psyche compared to the real people you know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that certainly when I read books, I think that's what we all do. You know, we compare them to people we know, and you think about them sort of like a friend of a friend, something like that. And whatever you read, you know, you're doing half the job. You know, you're imagining everything. You know, it's words on a page otherwise. So the reader brings the book to life as much as the writer does. But in terms of how I think about my characters, I really do think of them as real people. I don't know whether that means that there's something slightly wrong with me, or whether that means I'm doing my job right. But yeah, I think of them as real, and I wouldn't be surprised if they walked in the door. Let's see. Thank you guys so much.